continuing with our Savta stories, part 2. So we were talking about the movie theater, and you're working at the movie theater. What are some of the films that you remember seeing?
Well, of course, the one that sticks in my mind personally was always Gone with the Wind. I saw it, I believe, either 3 or 4 times, and I read the book at least that many times. It was my favorite of all times. And other than that, the best movies around for the theater was anything that Shirley Temple did. She was a real plus to the theater. And my father would say she paid off the mortgage. And he had a picture of her in his office for so many years, which is now hanging in my place. It must be 85 years old anyway. And I still say good morning, Shirley, when I walk in. She was great. She was just great.
You remember any other movies that came, like Dr. Zhivago? Was that around then, or?
I don't remember the times. I know
Charlie Chaplin.
Charlie was a little early for me.
Mm-hmm.
He was before there were talkies, and by the time I was around, they were all talkies.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, it was there were the World War II shows, and personally, I loved Exodus,
Mm-hmm.
which would have been maybe 48, 49. I was still working at the theater at the time. But I will tell you, I was the most popular girl there was, because in my growing up years, younger than when I worked, I took all my friends in for free. So we'd gather together like on a Friday night, and there would be like 5 of us. Oh, they loved it. Everybody got in for free.
Grandpa didn't mind?
Not sure Grandpa knew. He was busy doing his own thing. The ushers all knew, and nobody minded, so that was fine.
You told me a story about Aunt Ethel working in the cashier's office. What
Yes.
happened?
Yeah, she sold tickets, and the cashier's, the ticket box area was outside of the theater in front, and then you had to buy it and walk around and walk in. So one night, a man came up and with a gun and said, "Give me your money." And Aunt Ethel was very smart. She said, "Okay, no problem." And she walked out of the booth and handed him the bag of money. He took it and took off. And later on, we found out that the bag only contained the coins, that Aunt Ethel had put the dollar bills and that money into a separate place, so that he did not get off with most of the money. So that was Aunt Ethel. She was always a smarty.
What impact do you think working at the theater, and what impact do you think that had on your life?
Well, I earned some money. In those days, you wanted money. In my family, if you wanted money, you earned it. So I earned the money and learned how to be pleasant to the customers, learned how to give change. Today's world, man, if the computer isn't working, forget giving people change. But when you worked like that, you became adept at being able to figure out the change in how it worked. So, and I made friends, you know, Jewish girl in Royal Oak meeting all these non-Jewish people, the other girls who worked at the candy counter, the ushers who were always hanging around the candy counter. Learned to get along with all of them. They were all my buddies. And I think maybe they appreciated the fact that even though I was the owner's kid, I was there hard at work.
Mm-hmm. And you still like movies?
I adore movies. Movies are the best things for me, you know. And I prefer it in the movie theater. The other just is not the real McCoy for me.
Mm-hmm.
But you do what you do.
So you told me that when you would come home from school, well, first of all, what was the name of your school that you went to?
My elementary school was Washington. And it was about maybe a 6-7 block walk from home.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was junior high school. And I do not remember a name. So I'm kind of thinking it was just Royal Oak Junior High. The high school was Royal Oak High School.
Mm-hmm.
And in those days you walked.
How far was it?
Well, I'd say high school was probably at least a mile.
Mm-hmm.
And my mother didn't drive at that point, or she didn't have a car. And so we walked no matter what. No buses.
What'd you do about lunch?
I came home for lunch in elementary school, but after that, everything was either I took it. In junior high, that we had a favorite little joint that we'd go to for a hamburger and french fries for lunch.
Do you remember the name of it?
Just vaguely remember it was about a block away from the school. Yeah.
In high school, did you go there too?
No. It was high school. I don't remember ever going out at high school. It was bring your lunch or go to the cafeteria and get it.
Did you have girlfriends that you walked to school with?
Yes, I walked to school with, her name was Mary Ledoux. And she and I went all the way through grade school together, junior high. We were always competitors scholastically. So, but I used to see Mary a number of years ago because every year we had a class reunion.
Mm-hmm.
And she was still with us, and I don't know what's happened to her in the last 6 years because it finally stopped after 60 years of class reunions. They finally, not enough people to have them anymore. So. But yeah, she and I were walkers together.
And what was going on at your house when you would come home from school?
Well, usually my father was sitting in his easy chair in the sunroom, reading the newspaper, and then he'd usually fall asleep. I'd maybe go outside. We didn't have TV.
You didn't have a TV?
My father wouldn't allow one in the place. It was his main competition, and he figured if he didn't have one, it was going to be okay. Finally, after many years, he broke down and got one. But it was just listen to the radio for us. Actually, gave you a pretty good imagination, if you think about it, as you had to really picture what was going on without any help.
And Grandma, where was she when you would come home?
She was always there, Grandma. You know, she didn't start driving, she didn't take driving lessons until the war. We always kidded her because she started learning how to drive when gas rationing was going on. She started smoking when cigarettes were hard to find. And there was something else, I can't remember what it was, but Grandma was always ready when things were struggling. She was ready to try it. But even when she learned to drive, it was a while before she had a car, and Grandpa would never let her touch his car. He was a car guy. Loved his cars.
What do you remember about Grandma and Grandpa's personalities, or like, what were they like?
Well, Grandma was a very loving person, a hugger, and she made you feel like you were special. And Grandpa lived his own life. He was just all business. Although once he took me to the Thanksgiving football game that Royal Oak always played against Birmingham. First time he'd ever taken, I'm not sure, it might have been the first time he'd ever been to a football game. And the reason, first of all, it was shocking that he took me. And second of all, it was a while before we realized that we were sitting in the Birmingham section. Who
That's
knew?
very funny.
Who knew? Yeah, but he tried. He did the best he could.
Well, and he ended up doing pretty well for himself.
Yes. Yes, he did. You know, later in life, he bought a motel. He bought a couple of buildings in Florida. And, you know, for a guy who started from nothing, put 4 kids through college, not bad. Not bad.
You mentioned that about the war and gas rationing and everything. What was it like growing up in the Depression and during the war?
Cut it, okay?